Welcome back, everyone. Friar Tuck here. This is my epoch. So today I'm going to be talking about what some people might be considering controversial subjects. Now, in no way is this meant as legal advice. In no way is any of this, to a point where I'm telling you to go out and do this, because that's not what I'm doing. You are required to go do your own due diligence. See, when I was in the free man movement, one of the big things from the ones that were actually doing it right versus the ones that were doing it wrong is that the ones that were doing it right always encourage you to. They would just give you enough information to be able to go find what it is that you're looking for, but they expected you to understand it on your own, because you can't take somebody else's information and portray it as your own, especially in something like this. Now, since 2013, 14 or so, the free man movement no longer exists. Not only that, to be able to operate as a free man is no longer possible because of a lot of the things that happened under the Obama administration. Okay. Number two, the information that I am going to be talking about comes from a guy by the name of Lee Brobst. He wrote an article he wrote a newsletter for about 2 years called Eye of the Eagle, and most people know him for USA, the Republic, A House That No One Lives In, which I think you might be able to find it. But what he did is he took those 2 years worth of writings and kind of wrote a conclusion article. It was very technical. It took me probably 2 years to read it and study the things in which he said. Now, a lot of people might sit there and say, well, yeah, it's Lee Brobst, what a yada, yada, yada. But the thing is he was widely known for his knowledge in trust law. And even in white papers that were written, he was used as a point of reference for facts, even though out in the public they will tell you that, he was a quack and this and that and the other, contradicting themselves. There's a lot of things that was circling around the whole free man movement. But what I'm going to be doing is sharing with you the 5 lies that you've been told and believe as Americans, because the system is geared up to keep you in line. It's not that they're hiding it from us, because it's out there in the public if you know how to find it, or if you go and do your own research. So therefore, a lot of you people that say that the government should be called on treason, no, that is not right. It is out there, but it is buried in places where people don't go, which is books, because nobody reads books anymore. Nobody reads articles. Nobody reads technical articles. They're too busy taking somebody else's information and portraying it as their own. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into these 5 lies. The first lie that you are told is that you are borrowing money from the bank, and that is absolutely not true. I had to read this white paper probably about 10 times and really get into the technical details of it. I mean, it probably took me 6 months to fully understand what it was that I was reading, because of all the due diligence that I had to do to come to a complete understanding. But it's called Modern Money Mechanics. It was put out by the Chicago Federal Reserve Board in 1995, and it explained how our money system works before it switches over to the digital currency. Okay. And one of the things that people don't really understand is that you're not borrowing money from the bank. What is really happening is that when you go to the bank and you say, I would like to borrow money, the bank they are the gatekeepers that decide whether or not you get to keep that, or whether or not you get access to that money. And so what they do is they use a credit score. How much have you drinking the Kool-Aid? The higher your score, the more you drink the Kool-Aid. Okay. Not only that, when the way that modern money mechanics portrays the way that money is loaned is, what happens is you go to the bank, you say, okay, I want to borrow money, and they say, okay, yeah, let us take a look at it, so on and so forth. And then what happens is, once they approve you, they create a closed-ended account, which means it can't be seen in the public. It's only seen on the back end within their system. Okay, and what they do is they create a note. A note is, if you read the Uniform Commercial Code, takes you about 15 minutes to read it, and it will basically break all of our laws down in a nutshell, because what happens with our laws is they keep redefining the definition so that they can maneuver around a lot of these things. Okay, but the truth is you need to understand what a promissory note is. It's an unconditional promise to pay. Okay, which means that under no condition are you going to go out there and deny payment because you agreed to it. But how does that actually become what we call money in our society? Well, that signature in which you put there, that is the collateral. That is because what you're doing is you're leveraging yourself, and then the bank also, well, we want assets and stuff like that as collateral. But all in all of this is actually created just off of a signature. You can on a napkin, and this has actually been proven, you can on a napkin say, I unconditionally promise to pay you the amount of whatever, and give the terms of the payment. And as soon as you sign it, you could at least up until probably about 10 years ago, you could take it to a bank, and the bank would give you a certain percentage of it, even though it was written on a napkin, because it fit the Uniform Commercial Code's definition of a promissory note, an unconditional promise to pay. Even the money in which we have out in the system right now, it is a Federal Reserve note, and the Federal Reserve note is a promissory note. So what they do is they do this closed-ended account. So let's say you borrow $100,000, okay, and so they put it at a negative balance of $100,000 plus an interest rate, because that is the bank's administrative fee, okay? Even though there were wars fought over this and a global collapse in the mid 1300s between the black nobility and the Catholic Bank. And you should read a book by Daniel Estalon called The Bilderbergers, which is actually where he sits back and explains a lot of that, okay? And so with the interest and everything else like that, they take their interest out first because they want to get paid for middlemaning it. Even though they didn't create any money, there was no money to be created. It was just what it is credits are being put out. So you got to understand what a credit is. You got to go read the Federal Reserve Board's Modern Money Mechanics to really understand that. Okay, and then you pay it back. Once that account is brought to zero, it's closed, and then therefore you get title and you get complete ownership. Up until that point in time, the bank indirectly owns the property as collateral. Okay, so are you really borrowing money? No, you're not. You are the money. Your signature is the money because you unconditionally promised to pay. Whenever you go out and you take out a loan, or you go and you buy something on credit, then what is happening is you are creating the money. So when you sit there and complain and say that the government is creating the money, no. In order to be able to create the money supply with all of the necessary credits that are out there, they have to keep expanding that money supply. Okay, and so therefore, when we talk about how the government is actually expanding the money supply, no, you are every time you take out a loan. That is what allowed the system to continue to go. Okay, so that is number one, loans. Number two, and this will probably be the most controversial one, is U.S. citizenship. Everybody goes around and goes, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen. Well, what is a U.S. citizen? Under the Constitution, before the Civil War, okay, we were a constitutional republic, okay? And you were a citizen of your state, and by association, you were an American citizen, or what would later become a U.S. citizen, okay? And so therefore, your citizenship rights were there in the state. So, if you wanted to become a citizen of Texas, coming from the state of Colorado, you had to go to the Secretary of State and apply for citizenship, and then therefore they would give you. They would give you citizenship if you qualified, and the most important qualification was that you needed to have property, which goes back to an 1822 Supreme Court decision that made gold and silver movable earth. So therefore, it was considered property. So as long as you had gold and silver on your person, you were considered to have property. Therefore, it allowed you to be qualified for state citizenship, okay? And our founding fathers believed that no man shall remain stateless. Not should, but shall. There's a difference. You need to understand the legal terms. Legalese is much different than the common language that you and I use. They take the language that you and I use, and then they redefine it in their own terms. And so therefore, when we speak things, we think we're talking about one thing, but really what's happening is we're talking about another. Okay, so once the Civil War was finished, and you'll have a lot of people that will contend that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were unconstitutional, because the only way that the southern states were allowed back in was so that they would is if they accepted the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which overwrote the original 13th Amendment, which has been rewritten into the Constitution post Civil War. Okay, and so before the U.S. citizenship or the 14th Amendment was passed, okay, you should go read the 14th Amendment and know and understand it, because it is a big debate that we are having in society, and nobody really fully understands what U.S. citizenship is, okay? But before the 14th Amendment was passed, within hours before it was passed, the Expatriation Act was passed. Why did Congress pass the Expatriation Act before they passed the 14th Amendment? And the reason is because for every in, there has to be an out. You cannot compel anybody to do anything. You cannot compel performance. This has been a long legal standing. The person actually has to agree to it. So for every in, there is an out. And so that's why they gave the out before they gave the in. Okay, and so therefore, because and the argument was because the southern states would not allow the freed black slaves to become citizens, and our founding fathers believed that no man shall remain stateless, that this was a way to be able to give federal citizenship. So up until about the 1930s, 1940s, a U.S. citizen was actually considered a second-class citizen, okay? Because even the Supreme Court rules on a regular basis that the Bill of Rights was designed to protect the citizens of the state from the federal government, not federal citizens from the federal government, which is why everybody complains, oh, well, they're taking our rights away. No, you signed your rights away because you keep going, I'm a U.S. citizen, okay? And so with that U.S. citizenship, you are waiving your rights for benefits and privileges, okay? And so how do we get back to it? Well, you're not going to be able to get back to it anymore. Those doors have been closed, and a lot more doors are being closed on a daily basis. But this is just an interesting point in history to kind of understand your place within society. Okay, number 3 is we're a republic, and this is something I hear a lot of people. Oh, we're a republic. We're a republic. No, we're not. No, we're not. We haven't been a republic since the Civil War. Okay, and you got to understand, what the Constitution is and what the legal terms for Constitution is. A Constitution requires constitutors, and a constitutor is one who takes their debt and passes it from themselves onto a third party. And so what the states did is they took their collective debt and they passed it on to the federal government to be able to manage on their behalf, therefore creating the Constitution. Okay, now up until about 1861, when the Civil War started, we were a constitutional republic. But, one thing that most people don't understand, and this is probably something you should go look up, I think it's the Reorganization Act of 1872 or 1877, because you'll hear, at least back in the day, you used to hear people talk about how the U.S. is a corporation. It's become accepted fact, but people don't actually understand what that means. Okay, in the Reorganization Act, what it did is it reorganized the government of Washington, D.C., i.e. the U.S. government, okay? So that is the seat of power for our society, and we've always looked at it like that as far as on a federal level, okay? So we have gone through multiple reorganization acts. We went through another one in the 1930s under FDR. Okay, and a lot of these reorganization acts were preceded by a U.S. bankruptcy. I think the U.S. has declared bankruptcy like 7 or 8 times in our history, maybe more, maybe less, not exactly sure. I don't remember the numbers. It's been a long time since I've read it. But the thing is if you really want to understand the government and what we're in, go look at the most recent Reorganization Act, because at that point in time, we were reorganized from the previous government into a new government with new rules, new laws, and a new way to be able to do government. So to be able to say, yes, we're a constitutional republic, no, what they did is it's just like in Windows. They have something in Windows called WoW, Windows on Windows, or shit on shit, okay? And so the republic is the foundation of what we're on, but then they overlay another government on top of it. So, for example, during the time of Andrew Jackson, a lot of what the federal government did is they created a territorial overlay that was the exact boundaries of the several states. Okay, and so therefore, when we look at a map, we see that, but we're not realizing that they're actually federal territory that has been plopped on top of the actual state. Okay, and so this is really. Whenever people say, "Oh yeah, we're a republic," this is one of the things that just still baffles me. But the thing is if you don't know, you don't know, and now that you know, if you continue on that road, then it becomes plain old ignorance. Okay, but we stopped being a republic over 100 years ago. Okay, 164 years ago, 160 years ago. Okay, so we are no longer a constitutional republic, have not been for a long time. So people using that argument really does not make sense. But this is a lie that we're told and we believe, because this is what keeps us together and keeps us in line. As long as we believe this lie, then we are able to we're able to coexist, and the government is able to retain its power. Okay, so that's number 3. We are not a republic. Okay, this is my favorite one, and this is actually one of the big reasons why Lee Brobst wrote the articles that he did, and it surrounds taxes. So if you read, I read all 24 of his monthly newsletters, his 2 years worth of writing, and on the side he would kind of let people know a little bit of his story. And his story is that he actually went to prison for tax evasion. Okay, he was one of those that used the 16th Amendment as a way to say that, yeah, it was meant to be a 1-year tax, Well, while he's in prison, there is a guy that puts out a newsletter, and in this newsletter, the guy outlines that yes, he is part of the ruling elite, and so on and so forth, and he actually agrees with it. But the one thing that he disagrees with is that the people should at least be informed and be able to give their consent instead of being misinformed in one form or fashion. Okay, so the actual real reason why we pay taxes has nothing to do with the 16th Amendment, and that is just a red herring argument so that you will go to jail and that you will end up as a tax protester. Okay, but there are 2 things about taxes that you should really, really understand. First of all, the Interstate Commerce Act of 1887 was amended in 1940 to include U.S. citizens as carriers of commerce. Okay, so you are a commercial vehicle according to the government, because the federal government was never allowed to have citizens. It was only allowed to have assets and property. Okay, so therefore you are an asset, you are a property, so therefore you are a carrier of commerce. And because you are in whatever state, you're governed under interstate commerce, because you are no longer in the District of Columbia as a U.S. citizen. You are domiciled in another territory, so therefore they're able to lay and regulate your taxes. Now, another thing that you should also know, and I've always tried to tell people this, and I always try and tell especially young kids this, because this is a mistake that most of us make. Okay, and this is part of the reason why I do pay my sales tax, but up until recently, when I owned a business is when I really started paying my taxes. Okay, but the truth is that the first time you file taxes, you are required to file every time thereafter. Okay, and if you never file for taxes, you never have to. But there also comes strings attached to that. That means you cannot receive any government benefits. That includes tax write-offs. That includes, benefits like food stamps and welfare. That includes any benefit that any U.S. citizen would get, which would therefore take you back to your state citizenship roots, because only U.S. citizens are the ones that are being taxed. And now one more thing that I would like to throw in there as a bonus is that when Ronald Reagan came into office, one of the first things that he did was commission a panel to look at how we could be more efficient with our tax dollars so that it would release the burden on the American people. And in like 1983, about 1983, the commission comes back after 2 years and says, well, you know what? Not a single dime of the income tax, not any other tax, but the income tax ever makes it to the federal budget. Now, I would recommend, if you really want to delve into this, reading a book called Fruit from a Poisonous Tree. Now, this was written by a federal lawyer who was, I believe, ex-Marine JAG officer, and I think he even got promoted to being a federal judge at one point in time, and he went on a tax rant. Now, I was on there looking for something else, and there was, in chapter 2, there's 2 paragraphs paragraphs that basically outlines how you and I, with our birth certificate, were collateralized and sold out on the international market. But he just went on this whole tax rant, and I think he says it's trust number 47 or 42 that is based out of Puerto Rico, which is why Puerto Rico will never become a state. But it is actually a foreign corporation that is doing this. And a lot of people have their own speculations on why all of this is happening. I'm not going to speculate because I just don't know. I just know that according to this guy who has the legal background to be able to talk on this subject, is that this is what happens to our taxes. So when you pay taxes, it is left there in this trust for 365 days. At the end of that 365 days, any funds that are left in that account are deemed as abandoned and then therefore go to the private corporation, also known as the Internal Revenue Service. Okay, just like the Federal Reserve is private, so is the IRS. Now, how does the government actually support itself? It supports itself off of tariffs and fees, in the same way that the county, or the city in the states make their money off of property taxes, sales taxes, and the fees for all the different permits in which you get. That is actually how our government is supported. So when you sit there and say, oh, my taxes are paying for it, no, you're just getting robbed, and you're willfully doing it because you refuse to educate yourself. That is really where we're at. Okay, so that is number 4, taxes. And last but not least, voting. Okay, so a lot of people will ask me, well, who did you vote for in the last election? And the last time I voted was I've only voted for president twice in my life. First time was for George Bush. Second time, while I was plugging my nose because I couldn't stand the man, was John McCain. Because I did not want Mr. Hussein Obama in there. So Barry, I was not a fan of yours back then. And I'm still not, but, we're not going to get into the politics of it, okay? But the reason why I don't vote and the reason why I stopped voting is because I learned this, especially from Lee Brobst, okay, is that back in the day, what would happen is because our founding fathers believed that the average man was not educated enough in politics to be able to make an informed vote, to be able to vote for their leaders, okay? And a lot of people disregard that when they're talking about their voting rights and so on and so forth, okay? And so what ended up happening was over time is they got rid of the Electoral College. Now, it's there in name only to kind of give us the illusion that everything is going the way it was supposed to under the constitutional republic, but that's not really what happens, okay, because it's all done on the popular vote. So this whole thing of we need to go to the popular vote, we're already on it. It has not changed. See, back in the day, what you would do is there would be a guy within your electoral district, okay, and he would go around to all the little villages and towns, and he would run to become your electorate. Okay, and then what he would do once he got elected is he would go off to Washington, D.C. So on the first Tuesday of November, you elect your electorate. And then on the first Tuesday of December is when the electorate votes for president, okay? This is why we actually don't know, we don't know who our president is until the first Tuesday of December, okay? So a month later, these individuals are off in Washington. And this is, if you listen to the story about how Abraham Lincoln was elected, this will really bring it full circle so that you fully understand. Is that he had to go out there and he had to make deals with the Electoral College members for the leaders of the different state groups, and this was actually how he was able to get elected. Okay, and they had to get up there and they had to give debates and in front of the Electoral College and win over the Electoral College, because the people that were sent there were educated enough in the political system and understood the political system, and they were sent off to be able to make sure that they acted in the best interest of their community. Okay, of their little region. And so that was originally how we used to elect people. Now what happens is whoever wins the popular vote in the state gets the electorate, and then in the first Tuesday of December, those guys have their hands tied and go off and vote for the person that they're told to. They have no free will or freedom of choice to be able to to make their own decision, because I think that the 2020 election would have turned out much differently. Maybe even the 2016 election and all previous elections before that would have turned out much differently, and we probably would have gotten much better leaders if we would have actually gone back to the electorate and the true way in which the Electoral College is ran. Okay, and this is why I stopped voting, because until they bring back the electorate, my voice is not being heard. I do not see any reason to vote. It is a popular vote, and when it becomes popular, you have no way to be able to influence such a large group of people to be able to sway them over to one side or the other. That is what these campaigns are doing right now. Okay, and so this is why a lot of people say, "Oh, you voted them in." No, I didn't, because it's the Electoral College no longer exists. Okay, it has existed in name only, and we still hold the traditional vote, but those guys don't actually get to choose who they actually vote for. And so we wouldn't know who our real president was until the first Tuesday of December, and it would take all the way up until Christmas sometimes. That's why he comes in about a month later, after he wins the actual election. So this is a quick turnover process, but now it's already decided in the first Tuesday of November, and so now we got to wait about 3 months, 2 to 3 months, before we actually get to see our leader come into power, which allows the previous leader, if he wants to leave and burn the house down as he's leaving, has the opportunity to do something like that. Okay. So these are the 5 lies that you're being told. Now, I know they're controversial and so on and so forth, and I ask you to do your own due diligence. Again, this is not legal advice. You need to go do your own research. You need to consult a lawyer, and you don't even want to know what I think about lawyers, okay? But you need to consult. An actual lawyer on any of the things that what I said, and go and find out for yourself, okay? But just remember that the lawyers are agents of the bank. They actually belong to the Middle Temple of the Crown Bank of England. I never really was able to fully wrap my head around that. But again, these are the 5 lies that you are being told that you believe on a daily basis, and that therefore it forces you, or not even forces you, it puts you in a position where you're making statements that you don't even know about. It's like somebody who doesn't understand how the slave trade worked and then wants to go out and say this stuff like, what is it, the 1619 Project, because people are too busy believing what other people have to say instead of going to do their own due diligence. Okay, so anyways, you guys know how to help the channel. Become a subscriber, like all that stuff. Don't forget to share this video, and everything else is down in the description. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.